talked about in the movie.
Hang on.
It's very
all right.
real.
Greetings and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast, where we discuss cult and obscure films that many people haven't seen before, but that we love or hate. It really depends. Today, we are discussing a selection from Dan Simon.
Or hate. It really depends.
Right?
Today, we are discussing...
Why am I getting an echo?
Because somebody's got YouTube on.
Or hate.
Oh, no, that's me. My
Uh-oh.
Why am I getting an echo?
Because somebody's got YouTube on.
There we go. Oh, no, that's me.
Uh-oh.
Turn it off.
It's an infinite regress now, Dan. Is it done?
I
Is it
turned it
over?
off.
Everywhere.
Why is it still going?
It's an
No,
infinite
it's off.
regress now, Dan.
I turned it off. Where is this thing?
Everywhere.
Someone else has it on.
It's an infinite regress.
Seth, do you have
There
your
you go.
YouTube on?
Where is this thing? Someone else
Do I have my YouTube on?
If you don't have your YouTube on,
I wouldn't know how if I did have it on.
No, Seth, go.
I have my...
All right, I'm going to mute. We're going to do this by process of elimination. Oh, wait, it's done.
okay, it's done.
So, Dan, you did have it on, right?
It was me, but it lasted way longer than I clicked it off. That's
That was like when you listen to old time radio.
That must
and
have something to do with the way that I should have muted you, but while that was going on, but that
Like,
I think
lady,
it has
turn
something
your
to do with
radio
the
up.
way
I
that
asked the DJ a question. Turn the radio up.
I'm going to turn you off, Seth.
so.
You can do that. See, look at that. I turned you off, Seth. You can't say anything now. All right, we'll bring you back. Okay, you're back.
Just do a whole show.
So, all right. Now that we lost the two people that were in the room, we are discussing.
Get out of here.
We are discussing. What are we discussing today, Dan?
Wonder Boys, which is should have been based on its budget and all-star cast and studio and director and novelist, a very prominent studio movie, if not an Oscar-nominated movie. But because of the terrible marketing campaign and
And did it win?
I don't know what they did. I mean, they didn't even release it strategized for like awards season.
But it won a Golden Globe, right?
What was that?
Was it nominated or did it win a Golden Globe? I think it did.
I couldn't tell you. I don't think it was even nominated. I think it might have even gotten an Oscar nomination for screenplay, for best adapted screenplay. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, it's an odd, obscure movie to talk about because the budget of Wonder Boys was what? Hold on a second. It was something like $100+ million.
No fucking way. Are you kidding me?
Let me.
Yeah, this is legendary. Like,
Yeah, but it wasn't a very technically demanding film.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
followed.
I'm sorry. $55 million. Still,
That's still
that's a lot, right? That's
quite a lot for a movie like this.
Yeah, and
It's basically like a Woody Allen type of movie. In terms of like it's story driven, it's character driven, it's
character driven.
dialogue. There's nothing fancy.
The protagonist, the novelist. It deals with, the main plot point is the shooting of the dean's dog, and then everything unravels from there. It was a book. All right, so it's personal to me for several reasons. One is my mother's a Pittsburgh Jew, and Michael Chabon is a Pittsburgh Jew, and it was shot in and around Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh and Shadyside in Pittsburgh, around the University of Pitt and Carnegie Mellon, which a lot of my family members attended. My grandmother and my granduncle, my aunt, my brother. So I know the locations really well. I know where it's shot. So that's personal for that reason. And the book is set all in that area. It's not really specific as to what university it takes place in. It's probably something like Carnegie Mellon or University of Pitt. And the screenplay is very good. It's a really clever adaptation because obviously Daniel Kloves takes a lot of liberties to make it a Hollywood movie. And it is very much a Hollywood movie. It has the traditional, happy ending, but I don't know. It's a great comic drama with really well crafted characters and wonderful performances, and the humor is amazing, and the dialogue is wonderful. It was really sharply directed by what was it, Michael Curtis? No, not Michael.
Curtis Hanson.
Curtis Hanson, who directed L.A. Confidential, and may he rest.
And it was written by Steve Kloves.
Steve Kloves wrote the screenplay, but it's a Chabon novel.
Right. Yes.
And I don't know. I think it's my favorite Michael Douglas turn because he allows himself to be a schlub in a way you don't see him doing in other movies, and he strips himself of the alpha character that he usually dons in his more noir kind of filmmaking. Not that he's not the leading man. He's very much the leading man and very much a romantic middle-aged romantic lead. But Michael Douglas is in my opinion, a very good comic actor. And as the rest of the cast, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is excellent in it as his has been New York gay publisher, and Tobey Maguire as his mentee. And anyway, I'm rambling on. I love the movie. I've seen it 100 times. I'm exaggerating, maybe about 50 times, because every scene just works and flows, and it's just beautifully crafted. I don't know. I don't. Do you guys had any problems with the movie?
I have no problems with this movie.
I have no problems with the
Loving
film.
it. I remember loving it when it came out. In fact, the character he plays is very much like the character that 20 years later he's doing in Kaminsky Method.
Yeah.
Everyone's like very accepting of.
Right.
But when he came out and did this character, people were like, "What?"
Right.
And they were like not very accepting of it. And so, although the LA Critics Awards were like loving it, and BAFTA was very accepting of it. There's awards nominations peppered all over IMDb. If you look.
But just to back up to one of the things that Dan was saying in the beginning, I think the film probably suffered more from the way that it was marketed than anything in the content of the film. Case in point, I'm going to put myself in solo layout here. I was trying to share this photo, but I'm going to just share it. The poster. I mean, what is this? A fucking Harry Potter like wizard movie? Like, look at that face.
It doesn't.
What the hell kind of
anything.
poster is that? Yeah. And like, I don't know what they were
They're
thinking.
trying to go for the Michael Douglas is the intellect. It's a Michael Douglas vehicle.
Right. But then they had to make that close up with the face he's making. It doesn't serve that purpose that you're talking about. So there's that. And then I always watch the trailers to these films as well. The trailers, it's just kind of like the only people that I could imagine would have gone to see this film based on the trailer is somebody that would be attracted to like the sort of witty sound bites of a Woody Allen film. It was just like Woody Allen type sound bites.
There's a lot of
There's nothing it's not a for a blockbuster film with all of these top billing actors in it all together at once. They presented this as like some kind of weird film, although the film wasn't particularly, I mean, there's aspects of it that are kind of eccentric, I guess, but it's like a pretty mainstream, like, and for 2000, I mean, this is a time and place where a film like this should have been widely received. And
it's
I think
following he just did LA Confidential, and he can do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And he chose to do this.
Right.
And this movie, like, it's not particularly cute. Like, all these characters like have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember until I watched this. I was like, oh yeah, this is a movie that shows you the difference between doing too much codeine versus doing way too much pot in a very specific way, if you ever want to see it in a film. And just there's certain things in this movie that are like kind of painful, and that's not in the preview or in the poster.
Yes.
either. But you do have the fact that because this movie failed, you got 8 Mile. Curtis Hanson had to do 8 Mile because of this movie.
And which made him a hell of a lot of money.
I know, and I think 8 Mile is a really, really good movie.
I'm ashamed to say I've actually never seen it. Is that
You've never
crazy?
seen it? It's
I've
a
never seen it.
really, really good movie that would
Yeah.
have never come together without the without
Yeah,
this.
I bet it's a good movie. I like any movie that's about that stars rappers and is about hip hop in them. Like I like all those low budget early 2000 gangster hip hop gangster movies that came out. I like anyway, that's a side note, but
Yeah,
I should see that one.
and he captures the process of writing in 8 Mile in a similar manner to the process of writing
And
that he captures in this.
But
It's about writing. This movie is really
yes.
about
it,
the shit you go through almost on every level.
it could have been a
Games
play.
that
It could have been done as like a play.
The jealousies that they have with each other, the fact that they're friends, but they're not really friends.
Right. What makes it cinematic is these little adventures around Pittsburgh and the visuals of that whole environment in, I don't know, what is it, January in a formerly industrial town that's now, hospitals and academia. And
it also, I think, in a way, it's kind of like a coming of age film, and which is strange because it takes place in college, which we don't associate with coming of age. But it's almost sort of like this is the first movie that I can think of that sort of depicts college kids as just like completely confused. Not like you have Animal House, which is just like college. It's like almost like a joke, but like this whole thing about like these kids that just really don't know anything about anything, and they're really childlike. Like they're really like children. And, and I'd say like that 2000, that's kind of like the beginning of that. That's when I first started going to college. I went to college in 2000 and I noticed like a gradual increase in how coddled college kids are. And this was sort of like it was like kind of like a coming of age, weird adventure sort of scenario. Like, yeah, it's also kind of like a little bit of an adventure film.
Yes, that's right.
And it's sort of an accurate depiction, at least if not somewhat cartoonish, but an accurate depiction of the types of relationships that professors and kids get into, students get into in college, like the boundary shit, like that. And they touched it in a very gentle way. Like they could have had much more inappropriate kind of like interactions between students and professors, but they tried to hint at the fact that like those kinds of things could happen, like sexual boundaries could be crossed, drugs could be shared, but like it didn't go too far.
Right.
I don't know. I guess maybe for some people it did go too far. Doesn't Tobey Maguire's character end up in bed with
the publisher?
With the publisher.
Yeah,
it's kind of racy, I guess, in some ways, but there's something, I don't know, somehow the film seems kind of wholesome. And maybe that's by today's standards, or I don't know what it is.
It also really gets into that thing that if you want to be successful and kind of have a network, you have to put up with that thing that you don't know how to do when you're in your 18 to 22-year-old period of the receiving the critique and giving the critique at that age, because there's so much ego involved. Yeah. And you don't know anything at that time. So that first critique where he's like, honestly, his writing makes me want to kill myself. Yeah. Like I remember that period, and it goes on and really it's just like now I just tell my classes, just be nice. Yeah. Because these people are going to be on boards and responsible for giving you grants someday, or just I know you really want to cut this.
That's what Samuel Jackson was saying in his masterclass about being nice to people. Like you're going to end up dealing with those people someday.
Yeah, you have this idea that when you're young, that it's really going to serve you to chop everyone's body parts off, whatever body part.
To go after people.
To really go after people. And it's not going to do you any good whatsoever, It's just not. But, when you're 18 to 22 years old, you have no concept of that.
Yeah, that's another thing that was nice about this film. Like, I mean, he's an interesting character, the professor. Like, I actually do. Normally, I could care. Like, they do the professor characters in these ways where they're either just like really over the top, or like this is a very believable character, very relatable. It reminded me of college. Like, it did. It was good. It was good at depicting what like a liberal arts education is like. I went to school for music, and I had, really interesting, deep kind of connections with professors there. And it was like, and I don't know. I think it accurately depicts like what a creative, how creativity is taught and how difficult it is to teach a creative subject, and difficult to know the balance of like how much criticism versus how much encouragement, and like what really is your job. Like, are all of these kids sitting in your English class going to become writers? Good writers, if even writers at all? Like, how many of them are actually going to continue to write 10 years after college? And like, so you're like, I'd be scratching my head as a professor, being like, well, what the hell do I do with these kids? I think maybe I would have enjoyed seeing more classroom time and more of that develop. But that's just my own bias. The movie turned into something totally different. But I loved those scenes in the very beginning of the film.
Right. Well, once the dog gets killed, that sort of
changes the movie. Yeah.
But the movie also deals with the mystique of the youthful, first time success. It's about it's very American. It's a very American movie. With the whole mystique of Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, and the first great book and not living up to it, and The Prodigy, and the whole thing about being a has-been, and never amounting again to that, prodigal wonder that he once was. And
it's a very American film in that regard.
Yeah, and that ties to the whole thing about Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, and the whole thing. It's dealing with how we're all sort of trapped in this idea of the myth of the great novel, and the great movie star, and the great ball player, and being the prodigy writer, the Wonder Boys,
and also the suicidal personality,
right?
And also the talent, and he's fucked up, but he's not dead yet. Fucked up.
Right, he's not dead yet.
And the whole sex
can fuck you up. That's right.
Drugs can fuck you up, but you're not dead yet. Fucked up.
Right. But that's a mystique too. These are
all these sort of like mystiques, because I was thinking there's this one moment, I can't remember what it was, where I was like, it's the moment where Tobey Maguire spits out the codeine and it lands.
Why don't we try that again?
His jacket, and he goes, "Let's try that again." And he says it's so cool, but he says it in a way that's so cool for an intellectual, but not so cool for a guy who's really, really fucking cool. And you just get the idea. It's like, you might be Michael Douglas cool, but you're not ever going to be Kirk Douglas cool.
Right.
You're never going to be epic. You're always going to be a guy.
That's why he's so great. I mean,
that's why he's so great.
Like, in a way, like the Kirk Douglases of the world are kind of a dime a dozen. Like, you can kind of pick them off the street. But Michael Douglas is such a nuanced and beautifully like a relatable actor. Like, he just does magical things with his facial expressions and intonation, and he's just such an enjoyable guy to watch. Like, it's like watching your favorite violinist
in the shadow of the generation of the
Absolutely.
creator before.
Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, of course. I'm not trying to.
Oh no! I'm just saying, like,
Kirk Douglas
it's a very
couldn't
special,
deliver.
relatable thing.
Kirk Douglas couldn't deliver the punchlines like that.
No, at
No,
all.
never.
Michael
never.
Douglas just delivers. His timing is so good. Like the line about Tobey Maguire going to prison with the puberty police.
Yeah.
Next Jean Genet, or like the example you had about the, why don't we try that again?
Yeah.
Just his reactions, like when they're sitting and they're in the bar and Rip Torn's dancing and the James Brown guys on the other side, and Robert Downey Jr. goes, "Oh, they just want to go home and curl up in the bed with Poe," and Michael Douglas. He's just perfect. I mean, that's good editing, but he's just, he's perfect. It's kind of, it's fantastic.
I love it.
I think it's Tobey Maguire. It's my favorite Tobey Maguire performance.
It's a really
Yeah, you know why? Because you want to strangle him most of the film. He's he's so irritating, and you don't know why. And then once you find out why he's so fucking irritating, the twist in the middle of the film,
Right?
then you're like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah.
like that. Then
I love
you realize
all
how
the
fucked
lies.
up he is.
The lies are great. All
Yeah.
the things about his, Catholic mother and
Right.
the Chinatown thing, and turns out he's just like some spoiled rich kid who.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like he's really really fucking annoying until you find out that he's like a pathological liar, and then you're like, oh, this guy's kind of interesting.
Right.
What kind of dancer? Whatever kind you want.
Whatever. Just make it. I love the part where Michael Douglas goes. He's on the phone, like, recreating all the events in his head, and he goes, "Well, it's not like he's not making it up as he goes along." And he just realizes the kid's just making everything up as he goes along. It's just perfect.
Yeah, man, definitely.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this one, and I hadn't seen it before, like you guys.
No, you hadn't.
I had not. I had not even heard of this film.
Yeah.
So
And don't get me wrong. I would never say that Katie Holmes is like a Triple Crown winning actress, but when there's one thing that she does, which she does in this movie, which is that, like,
Very well cast. Yeah.
It's just, she's so good at it.
Yeah.
She's just so good at that. Like, we need to have a conversation, and the other character is like, I don't want to have this conversation. Like, she does it in Ice Storm, and she does it in it's just, it's like that sort of like we're just not matched.
I think she responds to her scene partners well.
Yeah.
Like, she's got really good timing and stuff, but she's just got a face that is like interesting and like asymmetrical, and like has a lot of expressiveness to it. That's a big thing with, I think, with that. With acting, they like a lot of these guys, like, they're not, there's something very like a kind of a funniness. I call it like funny face. There's like a funny face thing with actors that are successful in Hollywood. There's something kind of just iconically funny looking about their faces, which
like
makes
Rip
people
Torn.
want to look at them. Yeah, sure. But literally everybody in this film.
Vernon
has that.
Hardapple. Who is that guy? The guy
right.
I doesn't even have a picture on IMDb.
I don't know who he is. I've never seen him.
He's done 2 movies, and he doesn't have a picture on IMDb.
He's amazing.
Not everybody cares about that stuff.
I know.
That's my car, motherfucker.
Yeah. He was an interesting character, and that girl whose name I can never remember.
She's a lot. She's in a lot.
She's in so many films. She's in all those Todd Solondz films.
Yes.
Like,
And
she was in
she's,
Happiness. She starred in Happiness. Did you guys see that?
Yeah,
well, wasn't she the co-lead on that HBO series Hung?
she was in Dead Zone.
Yeah, she was. Wait, on which HBO series?
Hung, about the
Hung. Yes, she was in that.
Abigail Adams is her name. I think that's her name.
No, I don't think that's Abigail Adams. It's Anne.
I always forget her name.
Isn't it the one who's
Ula?
It's
Ula.
wasn't she in Dead Zone?
Jane Adams.
Jane Adams.
Jane
We're
Adams.
so
Yeah.
sorry, Jane Adams. We're so
Sorry.
sorry. We love you.
Abigail Adams
She's an amazing actress.
is the president's wife.
And there's a lot of really good real authors doing extra work in the.
Is there really?
Yeah, the author of L.A. Confidential is wedged in there.
Oh, get out of here.
There's a bunch of famous authors all wedged
At the party scene?
parties.
She
That
was in
was really
Frasier
well
for a year too. Sorry, I know we
No.
moved on from that.
And I think it's one of my favorite Frances McDormand performances.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah. In a different sort of role for her,
Right.
much softer. and
She has to play like an earnest, sweet person in that film, which is not typical. Well, I don't know. I guess there's a sort of ironic earnestness to her character in Fargo, but like this one was just, I don't know. There's some, and I can't put my finger on it, but there was something very sympathetic about her. I don't know.
There's usually sort of a almost a hardness to the characters
That she plays. Sure.
That she plays, yeah. It's like a breath. It's like a breath of fresh air to see her doing a role like this. Yeah.
Who else is in
And Robert Downey Jr. is
doing
handmade.
He's what?
He's just, this role is handmade for him.
Yeah, he's just doing his hammy shtick.
Yeah, exactly.
his introduction, and he's got like a 6'5" transvestite.
You're right.
I mean, you can make an entrance with a 6'5"
Yeah.
transvestite.
And he's totally overdoing it, like just because he wants to, and because he knows that he can get away with it. Like I think the directors probably would have wanted him to tone it down a little bit. Like
I know. I
He's-
was happy with it.
I loved it.
I know. I was happy with it too. I don't know.
But they also describe him as like confused and like having put all of his faith into the Michael Douglas character. And he's probably like, when he's not, visiting Michael Douglas, he's probably falling apart.
Right.
Maybe because I don't know anything about the publishing world. His character seemed like the least realistic to me. Like it just seemed kind of like, like the comic relief character that doesn't really, I don't know.
Well, he's his editor, right? So he's
I'm sorry, he's the editor. Yes.
he's probably
The editor. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's
probably
the editor.
a lot like being that's
There's a line in the car where he goes, they want to get rid of me. He says,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, I don't fit the job description." And he goes, "Well, what's that?" And he goes, "Competence."
Yeah, that's a great line. Yeah, I remember that when they're in the car. But no, actually, come to think of it, I mean, it is sort of that is a kind of like dynamic, the editor dynamic, especially if they're friends like that. It's a very strange kind of marriage,
Yeah. I love when Vernon attacks the car and he goes, do you owe him a book too?
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, there's a lot of good one-liners in this film, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
What other films have they adapted from Michael Chabon novels? I know there's been a few.
It's
and
hard.
I never know.
I think this was it.
No.
Am I wrong about that?
No,
Because
definitely the other one.
He's definitely done
He even wrote screenplays. Like I think he wrote some original screenplays too, if I'm not mistaken.
He really? I didn't know that.
Film and television work. Although Chabon once described his attitude toward Hollywood as preemptive cynicism, for years the author has worked to bring both adapted and original projects to the screen. He pitched a screenplay, but it was never filmed. Okay. He was pitching stories in the 90s. He pitched stories for X-Men and Fantastic Four films and was rejected for all of them. So he's very had a lot of desire to be in Hollywood. Hollywood and to get involved. So when Rudin was adapting Wonder Boys for the screen, the author declined an offer to write the screenplay. I think saying he was too busy writing The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Mysteries of Pittsburgh is his, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
They made a movie out of that, which was not a successful film.
So a lot of his books have been optioned.
Right.
Like they've been trying to make the Yiddish Policemen's Union
Right.
for years.
Right.
Um,
There is
Miramax bought the rights to Summerland and Tales of Mystery and Imagination. It's, you know what it is? It's almost like The Catcher in the Rye. Like they never really did
That's
anything.
right.
Everybody's always wanted to do stuff with that. Yeah,
There
it's
is
like,
a
it's like
muted-
this is one of those novelists who's like perfect for Hollywood, and just like the shittach never like really happens, you know.
Sure.
Except in I guess in this film, so far I'm like trying to scan.
But
through
his
this.
plots are not, it's not like he's not like John Grisham or, his movies are always going to be character based.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I feel like his movies would be great. Like they're like they could be like Wes Anderson films.
Wes
You know what I'm
Anderson,
saying?
sure.
Like there's a very Wes Anderson-y vibe. Like there's something very cute about his style.
Yeah.
It's got pathos, but it's also like cute and fun. And and if you
There-
like a nice blend of pathos and cute and fun.
There
you
is
know, you like
also
Wes Anderson.
there is sort of a muted Jewish humor to his writing.
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very particular kind of Jewish humor.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So I know a lot of those guys out there, actually. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Your mom grew up in that community?
My mother grew up in Squirrel Hill. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm like, I have a handful of really close friends. I wonder if she would know their families.
I'm sure it's not that.
Yeah.
big.
It's a very tight, everyone I've ever met from the Jewish community in Pittsburgh has known every other person I've ever mentioned. It's like
Sure.
very tightly knit.
You know who's a Pittsburgh Jew is Charles Grodin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a certain wry quality to the attitude.
It's a
Not New York.
it's a rug. It's a city to be taken seriously. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
totally.
Pittsburgh is like, if you grew up in Pittsburgh, like you grew up in a real city, and
Yeah.
and it's got a grit.
Views.
It's got a real grit to it. Everybody I've ever met from Pitt, they've got something that like the kind of thing that I like about New Yorkers. Like Pittsburgh has that. The people are really like cool.
Its own thing. They're very prideful of their city too.
Yeah, they're proud. They're proud.
Like Chicago.
They've got the best football team
Yeah.
in history.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Here's a little piece of trivia. In the theatrical version, James Lear's monologue included Alan Ladd's death in his list of celebrity suicides.
Wait a minute. They wrote a play?
No. Listen.
Oh, the theatrical version. Okay.
Theatrical version. After complaints from Alan Ladd's estate, Paramount removed the offending line in all future releases of the film, including home video.
Wait, which offending line?
They mention Alan Ladd's suicide.
Wow.
And because of this, the VHS and DVD releases carry a disclaimer shown before the feature, warning that the film has been edited for content.
It's funny the way Tobey Maguire delivers a lot of those lines, because he has a thing that's Michael Douglas compared him I think I saw a making of years ago. Michael Douglas compared him to Humphrey Bogart, which sounds odd at face, but in the sense that he's always has this complete deadpan, dry delivery. And it works perfectly for this character when he's going through the deaths in that moment.
Yeah, well, he's reading off a list that is compiled by Kenneth Anger.
Is that what it is?
From Hollywood Babylon, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Guys, you'll have to excuse me for 1 second.
No problem.
It's almost like a mild autism.
Yeah. And I just read something else. Oh, the combination to the locked closet with the Monroe jacket is 5641. 56 games is the recorded number of consecutive games that Joe DiMaggio recorded a hit, and 41 is the year which he accomplished it in.
Oh. Yeah. They go into that a little bit in the book. Yeah. You know the famous song, right? Joe DiMaggio, we want you on our side. It's all about his streak. That swing song.
No, I didn't know that.
One night in Cleveland, oh, goodbye streak, DiMaggio.
I didn't know The books on James Lear's desks include Albert Camus' The Plague, Truman Capote's Answered Prayers, and Kenneth Anger's infamous Hollywood Babylon.
Right. And that marriage lasted how long? You know more about this than I do.
It was not a long marriage.
Like a year.
Maybe a year.
Yeah. And he was evidently the one guy who actually loved Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, but he was abusive.
He was abusive, physically. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
He was probably very jealous.
Yeah. But supposedly she called him, I think, last and said, come get me. So, so maybe she was looking for a tough guy because tough guys were coming over or something. I don't know. I don't know.
I love the little details about the size of her shoulders.
Oh yeah, that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's like, and these are like little infectious things about the film.
No, there are beautiful details. You can tell it's a movie about writers.
Yes.
And you can tell it's a movie that has like the story came from an actual novelist. It's a very novel-y story.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even when like Q says, I was reading the part of your novel about the bald cypress last night. Like they you have these little ways of going at each other, the way writers have.
It's what it is. It's like in
Rip Torn's fantastic.
It's like a concept in music, like production.
Yeah.
It's a thing like a lot of music producers refer to as like the sprinkles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the things that most people that listen to the music won't notice them, but they'd notice if they weren't there. And they really enhance the overall feeling of the piece of art, or whether it's piece of music or a film. Like that little reference, like the fact that guy stopped, that was the character Q. He stops him and he reveals a detail from the protagonist's book in the compliment that's just so like that, creates a picture in your mind. And it's just like, it didn't have, it seems like so random, but it flows so effortlessly. And it's like, that's like the glue that makes the film, all these different things kind of stick together.
And it actually makes a pompous writer likable in that moment. Because he's
there's a moment in
successful pompous ass who actually is kind of endearing in a
yeah.
There's a
and
moment
the ending
where,
sorry, go ahead.
The moment in Seagull, like where he's trying to like, it's at the end. It's right before Nina comes in and basically destroys Trepkov's life for the last time.
And before
he's like Chigorin would do it like this. There's like a broken bottle and it captures the light, and he's hated Chigorin like the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's this thing that he knows. He can describe a winter's evening in a certain way it's just better. Where he's got a technique that he likes. It's just,
yeah.
It's
Sheldon Hemingway.
Here's another thing that I want to like.
Chekhovian, actually. Wonder Boys is kind of Chekhovian.
It is.
Yeah. I want to be like super even more charitable to this film, because like what I want the audience to appreciate that this film attempted to do something that's very, very difficult to do, and it succeeded, in my opinion. And that's to tell a story about a bunch of people who are like struggling with shit, and then everybody ends up at the end, it's like a happy ending and everybody's gotten over themselves. It's very hard to do that in a way that isn't too saccharine or too sappy, or these types of films, they tend to come across like, especially with a more cynical audience, like the fact that it's just like a nice ending and everything turned out great for everybody, that like people don't make movies like that anymore. And there's an art to making a film like that.
Well, what works is it does follow the formula of a tight structure. The turning point is very clear. We know exactly what Michael Douglas wants, which is Frances McDormand. We know why there's conflict in the second act because kid murdered the dog, and they're both he's going to lose his tenure, and the kid's going to get thrown out of school. It's very clear. Like the action is very.
But you're right. I agree with that. But I think I'm just going to harp on one point, which is that even that being said, the fact that it works out for everyone, and it's not cheesy. That's hard. It works out for the crazy kid who's like a pathological
It's a happy
liar.
ending. It's a happy ending.
It's just like everyone gets what they want in the end.
Right.
And
it's a comedy.
Yeah, but it's a dark comedy, and dark comedies. Yeah, it's a dark comedy that's really sincere and earnest. That's hard. You know, all those different, like if it's a dark comedy, it's got to have some kind of a dark or silly or, you know, some kind of sarcastic, or it's just so earnest, the ending. And you're like,
you know, at the end of the day, the protagonist, these are good people with flaws.
Mm-hmm.
They're good people. They're not.
Not nobody's tragic. Like a horrible. There's nobody like who's a horrible human being in this film.
No.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to write a story about a bunch of like middle-aged divorcees trying to find love at this age, you know?
Right.
No, it's very difficult.
And then for Tobey Maguire to take a role like that, where like, you know, think about it. A lot of the people that went to see this movie probably assumed that him and Katie Holmes would have some kind of a romantic thing. Like,
he abstains, which even makes him even more likable.
Right.
You know,
but it's another not you know, it knocks the film off of the blockbuster rung even more, that it doesn't do those kinds of things. You know? But again, that's why we love this film, because those are the kinds of films we like. We like movies that do the unexpected and pull it off. And this film definitely does that. So
I love
we're almost at 42 minutes. Is there any closing thoughts?
What did you think of the soundtrack, Abram?
Oh, the soundtrack.
Music guy.
The Christopher Hampton piece, the vocals, the Bob Dylan stuff.
Yeah, that's a good. You know, I mostly ignored it, and because I don't know, I thought it was just like
that's what got the 55 million up. It
was totally on, like it was totally on the nose. Like it was exactly what, like if you had all the money in the world to pick all the right music and everything, I almost didn't notice it. That's how on the nose it was for me. I was like, I noticed in the opening credits, I noticed they're using Bob Dylan. Okay, I know what kind of music they're going to do in this film. Even if there's I didn't know for sure if they would have like vocal songs, like folk songs throughout the film, or if it would be a blend of instrumental, you know, stuff. And which it was, but like, you know, I knew once I heard the Bob Dylan thing in the beginning, I was like, oh, I know what the music's going to be like in this film. And it was exactly the way I imagined it. So I basically didn't. So that means it did its job. But a lot of the times we pick movies where there's something very disarming about the music in a good way. Like it doesn't distract from the film, but you notice it and it stands out to you. And then you kind of like, and then that becomes like a real talking point for me. But honestly, I think that's just proof that they did such an incredible job with this film. That the music was so like, you know, all this stuff that like I didn't even notice it, but it's like that's exactly what you're supposed to do with film scoring.
Of course, and as cliche is old man would be in the context.
That was the only thing that was jarring to me.
Yeah,
it does, but I think it's also because in the last 23 years, that song has been played out in that context of that kind of thing. I don't know how many movies have done it, but even just the way people use it on social media, like in 2000, they did not violate any creative code by putting that song in, but it was jarring to me just because it's become such a narrative folk song, and like it's like a meme, that song. In our consciousness, it's like anytime there's some kind of sentimental moment or something deep that you're trying to say, like that song gets to it. And it's funny because it was that was the first time I actually really thought about that song. Was because I was like, why is that song used so much? Why is it? It's a song about a young guy trying to teach an old guy something. That's kind of weird. I think this is just like a weird song. Like it's not that. Maybe it's not deep. It's just.
I don't
just
think
sounds
there's
deep.
that many. I think there's like 2 or 3 needle drops. The rest is Hampton's bluesy score with the guitar and the vocals. I think that was pretty much the movie.
Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, it was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be for that kind of movie. They could have
Pittsburgh is blues.
But also there's a sort of sweetness to, even though it's like it's not a gritty kind of blues. It's like a sort of sweet kind of like film score-ish blues. Yeah. And it's very, again, I'm going to use that word, very earnest. Like so much about this film is just like super earnest and super just showing you what it is. And it's like I have to now. It's like now I want to go. You guys have both seen this going way back. I only saw it once. I got to see it again. This is a movie I definitely am going to return to.
Watch it with your family. Watch it with.
It is like one of the. It's like a good date. It's a good date movie.
It's a great movie to watch with people because it's just so funny when you're with a crowd. If you're with an intelligent crowd, it's.
Wait, so Dan, let me ask you something. If you had to compare this movie to other movies, because this movie reminds me of so many movies, but I can't think of what they are. Like, what other kind of movies do you think do this kind of thing that you can think of? Maybe like
As Good as It Gets.
Yeah. Like Mighty Aphrodite.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more off the walls, but like, I don't know. There's something kind of, I guess for some reason, I mean, I keep going back to Woody Allen, but it does remind me a lot of Woody Allen.
I pick As Good as It Gets because it's a little bit of a redemption story. I mean, Michael Douglas is not as horrible as Jack Nicholson is and As Good as It Gets, but he's very flawed. He can't make commitments. He obviously can't commit to his first wife. He's got a horrible substance problem. He's blocked, But
I could totally see that.
He's redeemed through.
Well, you're being very specific, I guess, because you're comparing 2 films about a writer. I'm not even going there. I just mean like aesthetically and vibe-wise.
Oh, aesthetically. I don't honestly. I can't think of an American movie quite like Wonder Boys in that same kind of tone. But can you?
It just like vibes like very hard with other movies from that period. I feel like late like mid 90s to mid 2000s. There were a lot of.
I don't know why it keeps reminding me. And although Ice Storm is a much harsher movie.
Well, that's
maybe because both of them have like Katie Holmes and Tobey Maguire in them. I mean, I don't know.
I can see the comparison. It's a little bit.
I don't know why.
Ice Storm takes place in the 70s, right?
It does, but it was shot in 1997.
Yeah, like late 90s. I remember.
But even American Beauty is a similar period. It has a similar sense of humor too.
Yeah, it's definitely a film that's of its time, but just I guess people just glossed over it for one reason or another. But it definitely deserves a.
But As Good as It Gets is the same era as 97.
Yeah, same era, exactly. And I'm thinking, all the Woody Allen movies I'm thinking are like 90s Woody Allen movies. I'm thinking Mighty Aphrodite. I'm thinking Deconstructing Harry.
Well, isn't it? It's like midlife crisis stuff. It's midlife crisis.
Yeah, there's a character who's a little bit older, but who's going through something, and then he gets redeemed at the end. But there's this very special, particular way that there was something was in the air in that period of time, and
it was baby boomers who were in their 40s who were.
It was the baby boomer midlife crisis.
That's what who were nostalgic about their youth.
Yeah.
Who hated getting old,
and they're dealing with their kids that they don't know how to deal with.
Right. That's what it was.
Yeah. For sure. It's definitely it's a great period piece. Like
It's a
I know,
baby
like in
boom
another
movie.
50 years, like this will be a very interesting movie for people to watch to try to understand what like upper middle class American culture was like in the late 90s and early 2000s. Like this movie will tell you, like for aliens or historians of the future, this movie is like it does teach you a lot about that particular time and place.
That and The Sopranos.
Sopranos is a big one too.
And,
yeah.
and American, actually, Sopranos and American Beauty are dealing with a similar subject matter. American
Absolutely.
suburbia.
Yeah.
The baby boomers feeling their mortality.
Yeah.
All of that's
And also the end of an era, like
an end of the prosperity.
The game is, or
Yeah.
not even just prosperity, but like that the game is changing. The game's
game
not the
is
same,
changing.
and like
Yeah.
the mafia is not like gaining power and prestige; it's only losing it. It's
Right.
only getting worse. For
It was interesting because we talked about that when Sanja was on the show, about how like the younger generation kind of finds movies like The Graduate like hard to like. What do you have to complain about? Like
Yeah.
white,
Well,
suburban house. You like,
absolutely.
like I don't get it. Like
Yeah,
I don't get what your big problem is.
It's
man.
all the other things besides prosperity that
Yeah.
were fucked up. It was really like a lack of any kind of the baby boomers or the when like that period. Graduate was what 67, 68,
Seven.
67. Yeah, I mean it's like these are kids coming back from college or whatever. Parents just like they didn't know how to deal with that. These kids were going through like a spiritual crisis. Like their lives, nothing had any meaning. I think a lot of that they didn't have the culture and the communities and identity. They were having identity crises. Like, what is it to, it's
What's it all for?
What's that?
What's it all for?
What's
Like,
it all
yeah,
for?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think what happened was, I in a way, during the late 90s and early 2000s, there was just like creativity and technology and the internet that was just like getting into gear and cranking out, and people were like very hopeful in that earnestness. And I think that kind of kept going until you had the financial crisis in
That's right.
2007, 2008.
Well, 9/11
and that's
was-
when like 9/11 9/11 was like
beginning of the end.
one thing. Yeah, I guess if you want to talk about a loss of innocence, you have to kind of do
Wonder Boys is so pre 9/11.
before. Yeah, exactly.
mindset.
Like that's probably the first thing that you notice.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, even just how quickly Americans just like got right back between 2001 and 2008. They were just like, we got to make movies that are optimistic. There was still like a lot of sort of earnestness and optimism that I think persisted in, and I really think that the people growing up like in relative wealth and comfort, losing their homes, seeing their parents lose their homes, just like downsizing, going from like a 5-bedroom house to like a 2-bedroom house, whatever. And that was just happening to millions of Americans. I think that was like the kiss of death in a lot of ways. And that's when I think a lot of our art started becoming like a lot more cynical, where like if like a movie like this had been made post 2008, like people would have like just scoffed at it
because they're privileged people. Wonder
yeah
Boys,
no
yeah Wonder Boys
Yeah.
is about privileged people.
yeah
So like you post 08 crisis, it's a hard movie.
yeah
to
it's like
start.
it's like who cares about these fucking
Like Ferris
guys
Bueller's
and
Day
their
Off.
problems? I've got bigger problems than that,
It's like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like you couldn't
Right.
make that movie today because it's about like a prosperity, adolescence in a very prosperous environment.
Yeah.
White suburbia in Chicago,
Yeah, for sure.
I love it, but
No, it's a great film. You guys should
Yeah.
all check it out. We're gonna close with that, and we'll see you all next week. And we are doing Judy's film next week, right?
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we'll get a preview of that up there soon.
Awesome.
Peace.
Cool. Peace.
Bye, guys.
5